The carved bone token struck Liam Carrick's temple hard enough to sting, then tumbled into his open palm as he reached up reflexively, and before he could shake off the surprise, a voice behind him said, quite clearly, "Now you are mine." He turned. The orc woman was small by any standard, barely reaching his shoulder, with sharp green features and tusks no larger than milk teeth. Her dark hair was braided tight against her skull in a pattern that suggested precision more than vanity. She wore traveling leathers and carried a pack that smelled of sawdust and linseed oil. Her expression was perfectly calm, as though she had just commented on the weather. Liam looked down at the token. It was old bone, yellowed and smooth, carved into an intricate knot that seemed to fold in on itself without beginning or end. The work was extraordinary. He had spent enough time examining the grain of wood and the structure of living branches to recognize mastery when he saw it. "That is quite an opening," he said. "It is traditional," she replied, "among orcs, among my clan." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You are not giving it back." "I am not," he agreed. The token felt warm in his palm, as if it had absorbed the heat of her body. "Should I be?" Most humans would have dropped it by now. Liam smiled. He had a good smile, easy and unforced, and he knew how to use it. "I am not most humans." The trade fair sprawled across a broad meadow where three valleys met, high enough in the mountains that the air carried the sharp bite of coming autumn. Merchants had raised tents and stalls in neat rows, and the crowd was mixed. Human farmers and herders, orc clans from the higher passes, a few dwarf traders with their locked chests and suspicious eyes. Liam had come to check on a client's apple trees and to source rootstock for a difficult grafting job. He had not expected to be claimed. The orc woman stepped closer. She moved with economy, no wasted motion. "My name is Rivka Oresk. I am the token keeper for the Stoneback clan. I carved that piece 7 years ago for my mother before she died." "Liam Carrick," he said. "I graft trees, mostly fruit, some ornamental. I am sorry for your loss." It was a fever, quick and clean. Rivka's tone was matter-of-fact, but her fingers twitched slightly, as if reaching for tools that were not there. "The token was meant to be given when I was ready. I was not meant to throw it at someone's head at a trade fair. But you did." "I did." Liam turned the token over in his hand, feeling the weight of it. "Why me?" Rivka's jaw worked for a moment, as if testing the words before speaking them. "I have carved 83 courting tokens in the past 6 years. 83. I know the weight of ash and oak, the grain of walnut and cherry. I know how to read a person's hands and cut the wood to match. I have never carved one for myself. And then I saw you examining Gret's apple stock, and you held the branches the way I hold wood, and I thought—" She stopped. Started again. "I thought I would regret it if I did not try." It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone had said to him in a year. Liam studied her for a long moment. She did not look away. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Traditionally, you would come to the long table, meet the council. Begin the courtship proper." Rivka's expression flickered just slightly. "But there is a complication. There always is. I have not yet passed the carver's trial. I have been apprentice token keeper since my mother died, but to claim the title fully, I must present 3 commissioned pieces to the long table, the last of which must be made from wood I cannot easily obtain." "What kind of wood?" "Old fruit wood. Apple or pear at least 40 years grown, with a burl large enough to carve a full token." Rivka's mouth tightened. "Fruit trees are not common in the high passes, and the law is specific. If I give a token before I pass the trial, the gift is not recognized. The courtship is void." Liam felt a laugh building in his chest and let it out. "So you have claimed me with a token you had no right to give?" "Yes. And to make it legitimate, you need to pass a trial that requires what you cannot get. Yes. That is complicated, Liam agreed. He closed his fingers around the token and slipped it into his pocket. Good thing I know where every old orchard in 3 valleys is planted. Rivka blinked. You would help me. You threw a priceless family heirloom at my head and told me I was yours. The least I can do is see if you mean it. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around the eyes that might have been relief or might have been the beginning of hope. I mean it. Then we should start looking for your burl. Liam offered his hand. After a moment, Rivka took it. Her grip was strong and calloused, the hand of someone who had spent years working with blades and abrasives. He liked the feel of it. The fair went on around them, but Liam found his attention had narrowed to the small orc woman whose fate he had just agreed to tie to his own. It was impulsive. It was probably foolish. He did not care. They walked the fair together, Rivka explaining the nuances of her craft while Liam pointed out various rootstocks and explained the principles of grafting. By the time the sun had dropped behind the western peaks, they had reached an understanding. He would help her find the wood and guide her through the trial, and she would teach him enough of carving to appreciate what she did. It was a fair trade. It was also an excuse to spend time together, and they both knew it. Liam's wagon was camped at the southern edge of the fairground, near a stand of pine that provided decent cover from the wind. He made tea over a small fire while Rivka unpacked her tools and showed him the pieces she was working on. She had a travel case lined with felt, each tool nestled in its own compartment. Chisels and gouges, scrapers and barons, files of varying coarseness, blocks of wax and vials of oil. The order was meticulous. You are very organized, Liam observed. I have lost too many tools to be otherwise. Rivka lifted a small curved chisel, testing the edge with her thumb. This was my mother's. She sharpened it the morning she fell ill. The edge has lasted 6 years. Liam poured tea into 2 tin cups and handed one over. Tell me about the trial. What are the requirements? Rivka cradled the cup in both hands, letting the steam warm her face. 3 pieces. The first is a token for a stranger commissioned by the council. I completed that 2 years ago. The second is a token for kin. I have been working on it since spring, a marriage token for my cousin. It will be ready before winter. And the third, a masterwork, commissioned by the long table itself. The subject is chosen by them, and the wood must be rare enough to test my resourcefulness. In my mother's trial, they asked for a token from storm-felled Rowan. She found one in the high crags and carved it in 3 weeks. It sits in the clan hall now, suspended from the rafters. Liam sipped his tea, thinking, and they have asked you for fruit wood, with a burl. The burl is essential. They want to see whether I can work irregular grain. Can you? I do not know. I have never tried. Rivka's gaze was steady. That is the point of the trial. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. The fairground was quieting as merchants closed their stalls and travelers settled in for the night. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing a flute, the melody thin and mournful. There is an orchard 2 valleys over, Liam said eventually, near a village called Fernhill. The man who owns it is dying, and he has no heirs. He told me last spring that he would let me take what I needed from the old trees before he sold the land. One of them is a pear, planted by his grandfather. It has a massive burl on the north side, low enough to harvest without killing the tree. Rivka's head came up sharply. You would give that to me. I would help you harvest it, Liam corrected. And I would expect you to let me watch while you work. I have always wanted to understand carving. That is all, Liam met her eyes, and I would expect you to court me properly. Clan tradition or not, I am not going to be claimed by someone who does not take the time to know me. Rivka's expression did something complicated. That is fair. Good. Liam drained his tea and stood. I need to leave at first light to meet a client in the next valley. I will be back in 4 days. Meet me here and we will ride to Fernhill together. Rivka rose as well, slinging her pack over one shoulder. I will bring my saws. Bring warm clothes too. The pass can be bitter this time of year. I am from the high crags, Liam Carrick. I know cold. He grinned. I suppose you do. She left without ceremony, walking into the darkness beyond the firelight with the same quiet confidence she had shown from the start. Liam watched her go, then pulled the bone token from his pocket and held it up to the light. The carving was even more intricate than he had first realized, the surface covered in tiny details that caught the shadows. He could see where the tool had skipped once, a barely visible flaw that someone less skilled would never have noticed. It made the piece more real somehow, more honest. He slipped it back into his pocket and banked the fire. 4 days. It was not long, but it felt like an eternity. The client in the next valley was a woman named Marta who owned a small orchard of plum trees that had been ravaged by canker. Liam spent 2 days pruning out the infected wood and grafting in healthy scions from resistant stock. It was delicate work, requiring a steady hand and a good eye for the cambium layer where the graft would take. He worked methodically, sealing each cut with wax and wrapping the joints in treated cloth. Marta watched from the porch of her farmhouse, occasionally bringing out mugs of cider and slices of bread with honey. You have a lighter step than usual, she observed on the second afternoon. Liam glanced up from the branch he was splinting. Do I? You are smiling more too. It is unsettling, he laughed. I met someone. Marta's eyebrows rose. That was fast. It has been, 3 days since you came through last time. Sometimes things happen quickly. Is she pretty? She is extraordinary. Liam finished tying off the splint and moved to the next tree. She is orc. Small, sharp, very focused. She carves bone and wood for a living. She claimed me with a token at the trade fair. Marta was silent for a long moment. Then she said carefully, that will not be easy. I know. People will talk. Let them. Liam. Marta's voice was serious now. I have known you since you were a boy learning your trade from old Henrik. You are kind and skilled and too charming for your own good. But you are also human and she is orc, and there are people in these valleys who will never accept that. Then they do not have to. Liam straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. I am not asking for their permission. Marta studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Well, at least you are honest about it. Bring her by sometime if you like. I would like to meet the woman who made you smile like that. Liam returned to the fairground on the 4th day as promised. Rivka was waiting by his wagon, her pack beside her, and a long canvas bundle slung across her back. She had changed into heavier traveling clothes, layered wool and leather that would hold up to rough work. Her hair was still braided tight, but she had added a strip of green cloth woven through it. Ready? Liam asked. Ready. They loaded her gear into the wagon and set off down the valley road, following the river south toward Fernhill. The day was clear and cool, the sky a pale, unbroken blue. Liam drove while Rivka sat beside him, her hands busy with a small piece of wood she was shaping with a knife. The shavings fell into her lap, curling and pale. What are you making? Liam asked. A spoon. I promised my cousin's daughter I would carve her a set. How many in a set? 6. Eating spoon, stirring spoon, ladle, 2 serving spoons, and a honey dipper. Rivka turned the wood, examining it from a different angle. She is 8. She wants them decorated with birds. What kind of birds? She has not decided. I am going to carve 6 different species and let her choose her favorite. Liam found himself grinning. That is a lot of work for a child's whim. She is family. Rivka's tone suggested that was all the explanation needed. They traveled in companionable silence for a while, the wagon creaking over the rutted road. The valley narrowed as they went, the hills pressing in on either side until the river ran through a rocky gorge. By midday, they had reached the junction where the road split, one branch continuing south toward the lowlands, the other climbing west toward Fernhill and the high pastures beyond. They stopped to rest the horses and eat a cold lunch of bread and cheese. Rivka stretched her legs, walking to the edge of the gorge and peering down at the rushing water below. Liam joined her, chewing thoughtfully. "Tell me about your clan," he said. "What is the stone back?" "We are a high pass clan, old and small. 50 members, give or take, depending on the season. We live above the tree line most of the year, moving between summer and winter grounds. We trade worked goods carvings, leatherwork, woven cloth for grain and metal we cannot produce ourselves." Rivka paused. "We are also traditional. The long table governs by consensus and the old laws are taken seriously." "Is that why your aunt does not approve of me?" Rivka glanced at him sharply. "I did not say that. You did not have to. You mentioned a complication, and you went very still when you talked about the long table. I can add things together." She sighed. "My Aunt de Sass sits on the long table. She is the eldest of my mother's generation, and she has strong opinions about humans. She thinks we should keep to ourselves, preserve our ways, avoid entanglement with those who see us as monsters. You agree with her. I think she is afraid. And I think fear makes poor law." Rivka turned back toward the wagon, "But she is not the only voice on the council. If I pass the trial, if the token is recognized, she will have to accept it. And if she does not, then I will carve myself a new token and claim you again as many times as it takes." Liam felt something warm settle in his chest. "You are stubborn. I am committed." Rivka climbed back onto the wagon seat. "There is a difference." They reached Fernhill by late afternoon. The village was small and tidy, a cluster of stone houses around a wooden meeting hall. The orchard lay on the southern slope, a patchwork of gnarled trees with leaves just beginning to turn. The owner, a man named Thomas, was waiting by the gate. He was old and stooped, his face carved into lines by years of sun and wind. His hands shook slightly when he shook Liam's hand. "Good to see you, lad," Thomas said, "and this must be your companion." "Rivka Oresk," Liam introduced. "She is a carver. I told her about your pear tree." Thomas studied Rivka for a moment, his expression unreadable, then he nodded. "You are welcome here. The tree is old and strong. It will survive the harvest if you are careful." "I will be careful," Rivka promised. Thomas led them through the orchard, pointing out the various trees and explaining their histories. His grandfather had planted the first saplings 60 years ago, grafting stock brought over the mountains from the old country. The pear tree stood near the center, its trunk thick and twisted, the bark silvered with age. The burl was exactly where Liam remembered. A massive protrusion on the north side, perhaps 3 feet across, with the wood swirling in on itself like frozen water. Rivka approached slowly, running her hands over the surface. "It is beautiful." "It has been growing for 40 years, near as I can tell," Thomas said. "Started as a wound, I think, where a branch tore off in a storm. The tree healed around it. May I take a sample? Take what you need. Just leave enough tree to live by." Rivka unpacked her tools and set to work. She moved with precision, marking out the section she would cut and scoring the bark to prevent tearing. Liam watched, fascinated by the care she took. Each cut was deliberate, tested before being committed. It took her nearly an hour to free the first section, a piece roughly the size of a man's head. The wood inside was dense and dark, the grains swirling in patterns that seemed almost intentional. "This will work," Rivka said, turning it over in her hands. This will work perfectly." Thomas watched from a few paces away, his expression thoughtful. "You are orc." "I am. We do not see many orcs in Fernhill. Some folks here would not take kindly to your presence." Rivka met his gaze. "I am grateful for your hospitality then." Thomas nodded slowly. "My grandfather told me once that the old country was full of people who hated each other for no good reason, fought wars over differences that did not matter. He came here to get away from all that." He gestured at the orchard. "These trees do not care who plants them or who tends them. They just grow. I reckon people could learn something from that." "I reckon they could," Liam agreed. They spent the night camped at the edge of the orchard. Thomas offered them a room in his house, but Rivka declined, preferring the open air. They made a fire and cooked a simple meal of porridge and dried meat. The stars came out, cold and bright, and Rivka sat with the burl in her lap, tracing the grain with her fingers. "When will you start carving?" Liam asked. "Not yet. The wood needs to season. I will rough out the shape now to relieve the tension, and then let it dry for at least 2 months. If I try to carve it green, it will crack as it dries." "How long will the whole process take?" 4 months, perhaps 5. It depends on the weather and how the wood behaves." Rivka looked up at him. "This is the longest I have ever worked on a single piece." "It is the most important." "Yes." Liam added another branch to the fire. "Tell me about the carving. What will you make?" Rivka was silent for a long moment, her eyes distant. "The long table will tell me the subject once I present the wood. It is their right to choose. But I have been thinking about it, and I believe they will ask for a token that represents unity, something that bridges the gap between human and orc. You know how to carve that?" "No." She smiled faintly. "But I will learn." They stayed in Fernhill for 3 more days while Rivka roughed out the burl and cut additional sections for practice pieces. Liam helped where he could, holding the wood steady while she worked and learning the names and uses of her tools. She was a patient teacher, explaining the logic behind each cut and demonstrating the proper angle for the blade. He proved clumsy at first, his hands too used to the coarser work of grafting, but he improved with practice. On the 3rd evening, Rivka set down her tools and looked at him seriously. "I need to return to the clan. Present the wood to the long table and begin the trial proper. Will you come with me?" Liam felt a flicker of nerves. "You want me to meet your family. I want them to meet you, to see that this is real. What if they do not approve? Then they do not approve." Rivka's jaw set stubbornly. "But you should be there. You are part of this now." Liam thought about it. The smart thing would be to wait, to let Rivka navigate her clan politics alone and avoid making waves. But he had never been particularly good at doing the smart thing. "All right," he said. "I will come." The Stoneback clan's winter grounds were located in a high valley 3 days' travel north of the trade fair. The journey took them up through increasingly rugged terrain, the road narrowing to a trail and then to little more than a footpath marked by cairns. The air grew thin and cold, and by the second night they were sleeping under blankets piled 3 deep. Liam's horses struggled with the altitude, and he had to lead them slowly, stopping frequently to let them catch their breath. Rivka moved easily, her stride steady and unflagging. She pointed out landmarks as they went. A waterfall that froze in winter, a rock formation that looked like a sleeping giant, a stand of twisted pine where her clan sometimes gathered herbs. She spoke about her childhood, about learning to carve from her mother, about the responsibility of being token keeper. "It is not just about skill," she explained. "It is about understanding people. A courting token is a promise, a hope, a declaration. It has to reflect the person who will receive it, not just the person who gives it. I have to listen to what they say and what they do not say and then translate that into wood." "That sounds exhausting," Liam said. "It is. Rivka smiled slightly. But it is also beautiful. I have been there for 83 beginnings. I have seen people choose each other, commit to each other, build lives together. That is worth the exhaustion. But you never chose for yourself. I never met anyone I wanted to choose, until you. The words hung in the cold air between them. Liam stopped walking and turned to look at her. She met his gaze without flinching, her green face serious and open. "Why me?" he asked. "You said you saw me at the fair, but that is not an answer. Why me specifically?" Rivka considered the question. "Because you were gentle with the trees. Because you listened to the farmer and took his concerns seriously, even though he was old and rambling. Because you smiled at a child who ran past and did not demand anything in return. Because you looked at the world like it was worth caring about." She paused. "And because when I threw a bone token at your head, you laughed instead of getting angry." "That was funny," Liam said. "It was impulsive and rude. It was also honest. I liked that." Rivka's expression softened. "I am glad." They walked on. By the time they crested the final ridge and looked down into the valley where the Stoneback clan made their home, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The camp was a collection of sturdy tents and permanent structures built into the hillside, smoke rising from a dozen cook fires. Liam counted perhaps 40 people moving about, orcs of all ages going about the business of preparing for evening. "That is home," Rivka said quietly. "It is beautiful. It is cold and isolated, and we are always short on firewood. It is still beautiful." Rivka glanced at him, something like affection in her eyes. "Come on, let us get this over with." The Stoneback clan greeted Rivka with warmth and Liam with cautious curiosity. Children ran up to stare at him, whispering among themselves until their parents called them back. Rivka led him through the camp to a large tent near the center, where the long table met. It was not actually a table, but a circle of flat stones arranged around a central fire pit, each stone carved with a name and a sigil. There were 7 council members present. Rivka introduced them one by one. Her aunt Dessa, sharp-eyed and unsmiling, Korath, the clan's hunt leader, Marga, who managed the herds, Pelin, the eldest at 93, Thrag, who handled trade negotiations, Asara, the healer, and Gret, who Liam recognized from the trade fair. Dessa spoke first, her voice cold and flat. "You brought a human to the long table." "I brought the man I intend to marry," Rivka replied evenly. "His name is Liam Carrick. He is a grafter, and he helped me obtain the wood for my trial." "You have no right to marry before the trial is complete," Dessa said. "I know the law, Aunt. I am not asking for recognition now. I am asking for the chance to earn it." Korath leaned forward, his tusks gleaming in the firelight. "You threw your mother's token." "I did. That was reckless." "It was necessary." Pelin raised a gnarled hand and the council fell silent. The old orc studied Liam for a long moment, her eyes milky with age but still sharp. "You are Liam Carrick." "I am, elder. You graft trees." "I do." "Why do you want to marry an orc?" The question was blunt and the council waited for his answer. Liam felt the weight of their scrutiny and chose his words carefully. "Because Rivka is extraordinary. Because she is skilled and honest and brave. Because when she claimed me, I felt something I have not felt in a long time. I do not care that she is orc. I care that she is her." Pelin nodded slowly. "And you understand that this will not be easy, that there are humans who will despise you for it and orcs who will never trust you." "I understand. And you are willing to live with that." "I am." Dessa made a disgusted sound. "This is foolishness. The girl is desperate, throwing herself at the first human who does not recoil from her. We should forbid it outright." "You cannot forbid a courting once the token is given," Gret rumbled. "That is law." "The token is not recognized until the trial is passed," Desas shot back. "She has no standing. She has the right to try." Asara's voice was calm but firm. "That too is law." The argument might have escalated, but Pelin raised her hand again. "Enough. Rivka Oresk, you have petitioned to complete your trial and have your token recognized. Do you have the wood?" Rivka produced the wrapped bundle and set it before the council. Pelin unwrapped it slowly, running her fingers over the rough surface. The other council members leaned in, examining the burl. "It is good wood," Korath admitted. "Dense and old." "Pear wood, you said?" Marga asked. "Yes, from an orchard near Fernhill. The tree is 60 years old and the burl has been growing for 40. Pelin nodded. "It will serve." "Now hear the commission. You are to carve a token that represents the unity of two peoples, different in nature but equal in worth. The token must be functional, recognizable, and worthy of a place in the clan hall. You have until the first snowfall to complete it. Do you accept?" Rivka bowed her head. "I accept." "Then the trial is begun." Pelin rewrapped the burl and handed it back. "You may use the carving house for your work. Liam Carrick, you are welcome to remain as Rivka's guest, but you will be expected to contribute to the clan while you are here. We do not keep idle hands." "I would not expect you to," Liam said. Desas's expression was thunderous, but she said nothing. The council dismissed them, and Rivka led Liam out into the night. She was trembling slightly, the tension finally releasing. "That was terrifying," she said. "You were magnificent. Desas is going to make this as difficult as possible. Then we will deal with it." Liam took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Together." Rivka looked down at their joined hands and something in her expression eased. "Together." The carving house was a small stone building at the edge of the camp, built into the hillside for stability. Inside, it was lined with shelves holding blocks of wood, tools, and half-finished projects. A large workbench dominated the center, scarred and stained from years of use. Rivka set the burl on the bench and stood staring at it for a long moment. "I do not know where to start," she admitted. "Start by letting it season," Liam said. "You said it needed 2 months. Use that time to think, to plan, to practice on the spare pieces. And what will you do?" "I will work. Your clan needs a grafter. I saw at least 3 stands of wild apple on the way up. If I can cultivate them, you will have fruit trees within a few years." Rivka turned to look at him. "You would do that?" "I would. It is what I do, Rivka. I make things grow." She crossed the space between them and kissed him. It was the first time, and it was clumsy and sweet and tentative. Liam wrapped his arms around her, feeling the strength in her small frame, and kissed her back. When they finally pulled apart, Rivka rested her forehead against his chest. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being here. For not running when Desas glared at you. For making this feel possible." "It is possible," Liam said. "We will make it possible." The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Rivka worked in the carving house, starting with the practice pieces and gradually refining her ideas. Liam ranged through the valley, identifying promising wild stock and planning his grafts. The clan was initially wary of him, but he won them over gradually through steady work and a willingness to help wherever he was needed. He mended fences, hauled water, assisted with the autumn slaughter, and taught a group of curious children how to splice a broken branch so it would heal stronger than before. Desas remained hostile, but the other council members were more accepting. Korath invited Liam on a hunt and seemed grudgingly impressed when he proved a decent tracker. Marga asked his opinion on improving the pasture, and they spent an afternoon walking the valley and discussing drainage. Asara gave him a salve for his hands, which had grown chapped from the cold and rough work. Pelin, the eldest, invited him to tea one crisp morning. She lived in a small stone house built against the cliff face, the interior warm and filled with the smell of herbs. They sat on cushions by the fire, and she poured tea from a pot that looked older than he was. "You have surprised me, Liam Carrick," Pelin said. "How so?" "You have not tried to change us. Many humans who come here see our ways as backward, primitive. They want to fix us to make us more like them. You have simply worked." "I do not think you need fixing," Liam said. "You have built something strong here. I would be a fool to interfere with that." Pelin sipped her tea, her milky eyes distant. "Rivka's mother was my niece. I watched her grow from a child into a woman, and I watched her learn to carve with a skill that rivaled the old masters. When she died, I thought the gift would die with her. But Rivka has surpassed her. She has her mother's skill and her own vision. If she passes this trial, she will be the finest token keeper the Stoneback clan has ever known." "She will pass," Liam said. "You have great faith in her." "I have seen her work." Pelin smiled faintly. "Faith and love are not so different. Both require trust in what we cannot see." She set down her cup. "Desaf fears change. She lost her mate to human violence 30 years ago, killed in a raid by men who saw orcs as monsters. She has never forgiven that, and she never will. But she is one voice, and the long table decides by consensus. If Rivka passes the trial, Desaf cannot stop the marriage. She can only make it difficult." "How difficult?" "That depends on Rivka. And on you." Pelin leaned forward. "The clan is watching you, Liam Carrick. They are watching how you treat Rivka, how you treat them, how you conduct yourself. If you prove yourself worthy, they will accept you. If you falter, Desaf will have all the ammunition she needs." "Then I will not falter," Liam said. "See that you do not." The first snow came early that year, a light dusting in the third week of autumn. Rivka emerged from the carving house to find the world transformed, the ground white and the air filled with the hush that accompanies snowfall. Liam was working on a young apple tree he had transplanted near the edge of camp, wrapping the trunk in treated cloth to protect it from the cold. "It is beautiful," Rivka said, coming to stand beside him. "It is cold," Liam replied, but he was smiling. "How is the tree?" "It will survive. The roots took well and the graft is strong. By spring it should be established enough to support new growth." Rivka watched him work, admiring the care he took. His hands were red and chapped despite Usara's salve, but he did not complain. "You are good at this." "I have been doing it since I was 12. My master, Henrik, took me on as an apprentice when my parents died. He taught me everything he knew." "Where is he now?" "Dead 6 years. Left me his tools and his clients and a wagon that was already falling apart." Liam finished tying off the cloth and stood, brushing snow from his knees. "I rebuilt the wagon, kept the tools, tried to live up to his example. I think you have succeeded." Liam glanced at her. "Thank you." They walked back toward the carving house together, the snow crunching underfoot. Inside, Rivka had set up a new piece on the workbench, one of the practice blanks roughed out into the shape of a token. She had been working on it for days, testing different approaches. "How is the commission coming?" Liam asked, slowly. "I have the shape, but I am still working out the details." Rivka picked up a gouge and turned the blank over, examining it from a different angle. "The problem is balance. If I focus too much on the human side, it feels condescending. If I focus too much on the orc side, it feels exclusionary. I need something that honors both without privileging either." "What about something natural, something that belongs to both peoples?" "Like what?" Liam thought about it. "Trees. We both depend on them. Humans for fruit and timber, orcs for shelter and tools. A tree does not care who plants it or who harvests it, it just grows." Rivka stared at him. "That is perfect." "Is it?" "Yes." She set down the blank and grabbed a piece of charcoal, sketching rapidly on a scrap of paper. 2 trees, their roots intertwined. One bearing fruit, one bearing leaves. The roots share the same soil, the branches reach toward the same sky. It is unity without erasure. Liam watched her draw, fascinated by the speed and certainty of her hand. "You are brilliant." "I am desperate," Rivka corrected, but she was grinning. "But this will work. I can feel it." She spent the next 2 months refining the design and waiting for the burl to season. Liam continued his work around the valley, grafting and tending and teaching. The clan grew used to his presence, and he grew used to theirs. He learned to recognize individuals by their gait and voice, to understand the subtle hierarchies and relationships that governed clan life. He learned which children were curious and which were shy, which adults were friendly and which were reserved. Dessa remained a constant thorn. She found fault with everything he did, questioned his methods, and made snide comments whenever he was within earshot. Liam ignored her as much as possible, but the hostility wore on him. Rivka noticed and pulled him aside one evening after a particularly biting exchange. "I am sorry," she said. "Dessa has no right to treat you that way. She has every right. She is protecting her clan. She is being cruel. She is being afraid." Liam leaned back against the wall of the carving house, closing his eyes. "Pelin told me what happened to her mate. I do not blame her for not trusting me. But you are not the men who killed him. I am human. That is close enough for her." Rivka was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you regret coming here?" Liam opened his eyes and looked at her. "No, even with Dessa, even with Dessa." He reached out and took her hand. "I told you I was committed. I meant it." Rivka's fingers tightened around his. "I am going to start the final carving tomorrow." "The wood is ready. Are you nervous? Terrified?" "You will be brilliant," Liam said. "You always are." Rivka kissed him then, fierce and sudden, and he pulled her close. They had been courting properly for 2 months now, spending evenings together, sharing meals, talking about their pasts and their hopes for the future. It was slow and deliberate, the kind of courtship that built foundations instead of burning hot and fast. Liam treasured it. "Stay with me tonight," Rivka whispered against his mouth. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." They went back to Rivka's tent, a modest space near the carving house. It was filled with her things, half-finished projects, bolts of cloth, a rack of drying herbs. They made love carefully, learning each other's bodies, and afterward lay tangled together under a pile of blankets. Liam traced the line of her shoulder, marveling at the greenness of her skin, the slight roughness of it. "I love you," he said, and it felt right to say it. Rivka turned her head to look at him. "I love you too." It was simple and true, and it was enough. The next morning, Rivka began carving the burl. She worked with a focus that bordered on obsession, her hands moving with absolute certainty. The wood revealed itself slowly, the swirling grain suggesting shapes and patterns that she followed and enhanced. The 2 trees emerged gradually, their trunks distinct but their roots entwined in a complex knot. She carved leaves and fruit with delicate precision, each one unique. The surface was textured, alive, as if the trees were growing even as she worked. Liam brought her meals and made sure she slept, but otherwise stayed out of her way. He could see the intensity in her, the way she poured herself into the piece. It was more than a trial now. It was a statement, a declaration, a hope made tangible. After 6 weeks, the carving was complete. Rivka sanded and oiled it, bringing out the richness of the wood. The burl's natural swirl gave the piece a sense of movement, as if the trees were caught in a gentle wind. She held it up to the light, examining every angle, and finally set it down with a shaky breath. "It is done," she said. Liam came to stand beside her, looking at the token. It was extraordinary. The 2 trees were so intricately intertwined that it was impossible to say where one ended and the other began. The fruit and leaves were so detailed he could almost count the veins. The whole piece felt balanced, harmonious, complete. "It is a masterwork," he said quietly. "I hope the long table agrees." The council convened the next evening. The entire clan gathered to witness the judgment, filling the meeting space until people were standing shoulder to shoulder. Rivka stood before the long table, the token cradled in her hands. Liam stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding. Pelin gestured for Rivka to present the piece. She stepped forward and set it on the central stone, then stepped back. The council examined it in silence, passing it from hand to hand. Korath tested the weight, Marga traced the roots with a fingertip, Asara held it up to the firelight. Dessa was the last to hold it. She studied the token for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she set it down and looked at Rivka. "It is well made," she said grudgingly. "The craftsmanship is beyond reproach." "But," Rivka prompted, "but I do not believe unity is possible, not truly. Humans and orcs are too different, too mistrustful. This token is a beautiful lie." The words hung in the air. Rivka's face went pale and Liam felt his chest tighten. Then Pelin spoke. "It is not a lie if we choose to make it true." Dessa turned to her. "You cannot legislate trust, Pelin. No, but we can choose to give it a chance." Pelin picked up the token again, holding it so the firelight caught the grain. "This piece does not promise that unity will be easy. It promises that it is possible. That if we are willing to put down roots together to share the same soil, we can grow toward the same sky. That is not a lie. That is hope." "Hope is not enough," Dessa said. "It is a beginning." Korath stood, his bulk imposing. "I vote to accept the peace. Rivka Oresk has passed her trial." "As do I," Marga said, "and I," Asara added. Thrag and Gret voted in favor as well. Pelin looked at Dessa. "You are outvoted, sister. The trial is passed. The token is recognized." Dessa's jaw clenched, but she nodded stiffly. "So it is decided." Pelin turned to Rivka. "Rivka Oresk, by the judgment of the Long Table, you have completed your trial and are recognized as token keeper of the Stoneback clan. Your courting token is legitimate, and your claim is acknowledged." "Do you still wish to marry Liam Carrick?" "I do," Rivka said, her voice steady. "Liam Carrick." Pelin's gaze shifted to him. "Do you accept this claim?" Liam stepped forward, his heart in his throat. "I do." "Then let it be witnessed." "The marriage will take place at the next full moon, as is tradition. Liam Carrick, you are welcomed into the Stoneback clan as kin, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Treat Rivka well, honor our laws, and contribute to our prosperity." "I will," Liam promised. The clan erupted into cheers. People surged forward, congratulating Rivka and clapping Liam on the back. Rivka's cousin embraced her, weeping openly. Korath offered Liam a mug of something that tasted like fermented pine needles and assured him he would get used to it. Even Dessa, though she did not offer congratulations, did not object. Rivka found Liam in the crowd and threw her arms around him. "We did it." "You did it," Liam corrected. "That token is extraordinary." "It is ours," Rivka said. "It has always been ours." The wedding took place 3 weeks later under the full moon. The Long Table sent word to the human settlements in the valleys below, and to Liam's surprise, nearly 24 humans made the journey. Marta came, and Thomas from Fernhill, and a handful of other clients who had worked with Liam over the years. They sat at the Long Table alongside the clan, witnesses to something new. The ceremony was conducted by Pelin, who spoke in both orc and human tongues. Rivka wore a dress dyed the deep green of summer leaves, with her hair unbraided for the first time Liam had ever seen. It fell in dark waves to her shoulders, softening her sharp features. Liam wore a borrowed tunic, clan colors, and felt absurdly out of place until Rivka took his hand and everything else fell away. They exchanged vows. To support each other, to honor each other, to build a life together. Rivka gave Liam the token she had carved, and he gave her a cutting from the pear tree in Fernhill, grafted onto strong rootstock and wrapped in cloth. It was a promise to grow something together. Pelin bound their hands with a length of woven cord and declared them married. The clan cheered. The humans clapped. Dessass stood at the back, her expression unreadable, but she did not leave. The feast that followed lasted well into the night. There was roasted meat and root vegetables, fresh bread and honey, and the terrible fermented drink that Korath insisted was traditional. People told stories and sang songs, and at one point someone produced a fiddle and began to play. Liam danced with Rivka under the stars, clumsy and laughing, and thought he had never been happier. Late in the evening, Pelin approached them. "There is a place I think you should see." She led them out of the camp, down a narrow trail that wound along the edge of the cliff. At the end was a small plateau overlooking the valley, with a view that stretched for miles. A single stone structure stood there, half-built and abandoned. "This was meant to be a carving house for your mother," Pelin said to Rivka. "She started building it the summer before she died, but never finished. I think she would want you to have it." Rivka stared at the structure, her eyes bright with tears. "It is perfect." "It needs work," Pelin warned. "A new roof, walls finished, windows fitted, but the bones are strong." Liam walked around the structure, assessing it. "It is doable. A season's work, maybe less if I have help." "The clan will help," Pelin said, "and you have human friends who will likely assist as well." "Build your workshop here, Rivka. Make it a place where both peoples can come." "I will," Rivka promised. Pelin smiled. "Good, now go back to your feast. Tomorrow you can start planning." They returned to the celebration hand in hand, and Liam thought about the future. It would not be easy. There would be people who disapproved, people who hated them for daring to bridge the gap. But there would also be those who saw what they were building and wanted to be part of it. The months that followed were busy. Liam and Rivka worked together to finish the carving house, hauling stone and timber, fitting beams and laying floors. Friends from both peoples came to help, and the structure rose steadily. By spring, it was complete. A beautiful stone building with wide windows and a sturdy roof, positioned to catch the morning light. Rivka moved her tools in and set up her workshop. Liam grafted the pear, cutting into the rocky soil nearby, along with several apple saplings he had propagated over the winter. They would take years to mature, but he had time. Word spread about the token keeper who had married a human, and about the workshop on the pass where anyone could commission a carving. Couples began to come, human and orc both, asking for tokens to celebrate their own unions. Rivka carved for them all, her skill growing with each piece. Liam tended the orchard and continued his grafting work, traveling through the valleys and teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Dessass never fully warmed to Liam, but she stopped actively opposing him. Occasionally, she would even nod in acknowledgement when they passed. It was not friendship, but it was peace. 2 years after the wedding, Rivka came to Liam with news. She was pregnant. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing, and she clung to him with tears in her eyes. The baby was born in autumn, a son with green skin and his father's brown eyes. They named him Idris. The clan celebrated, and so did the humans who had become friends. Thomas sent a blanket he had woven himself. Marta brought jars of preserved fruit. Korath carved a cradle from oak, and Pelin blessed the child with words in the old tongue. Dessass came to visit a week after the birth. She stood in the doorway of the carving house, looking at the baby in Rivka's arms, and her expression was complicated. "He is beautiful," she said finally. "Thank you, Aunt." Dessass stepped closer, reaching out to touch Idris's tiny hand. "I still think you are foolish, both of you, but I suppose if foolishness can create something like this, Perhaps it is not such a bad thing." "That is almost a compliment," Liam said from his place by the fire. "Do not get used to it." But there was the faintest hint of a smile on Desaz's face as she left. Idris grew strong and healthy, a bright, curious child who loved to watch his mother carve and his father graft. By the time he was 3, he could identify different types of wood by touch and recite the steps of a whip and tongue graft. Other children followed. A daughter, Dara, with her father's charm and her mother's precision. Another daughter, Delana, quiet and thoughtful. And a third daughter, Brenna, who was fearless and wild and kept them all on their toes. The workshop thrived. Rivka's reputation spread, and people came from farther and farther away to commission her work. She carved wedding tokens and birth tokens, tokens to mark friendships and alliances, tokens to commemorate the dead. Each one was unique, imbued with her skill and her understanding of what people needed. Liam's orchard grew as well. The pear tree thrived, and the apples began to bear fruit in their 5th year. He taught the clan how to care for the trees, how to prune and graft and harvest. Within a decade, the Stoneback clan had orchards scattered throughout the valley, producing fruit they could trade or preserve for winter. The pass road became known as a place of unity, where the boundaries between human and orc blurred. Other mixed couples settled nearby, building homes and starting families. The long table welcomed them, recognizing that the future Rivka and Liam had started was one worth nurturing. On their 10th anniversary, they stood together on the plateau overlooking the valley. The workshop was busy below, smoke rising from the chimney. The orchard was in full bloom, a riot of white and pink blossoms. Their children were playing near the trees, their laughter carrying on the wind. "Do you ever think about that day at the trade fair?" Liam asked. Rivka leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Every day." "Do you regret throwing the token?" She looked up at him, her eyes warm. "Not for a moment. Do you regret catching it?" Liam kissed her forehead. "Never." They stood there together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The world stretched out before them, full of challenges and joys, and they faced it hand in hand. Two peoples, different in nature but equal in worth, sharing the same soil and reaching toward the same sky. It was not always easy. There were still those who looked at them with suspicion or disdain, who whispered that such unions were unnatural. But there were more who saw what they had built and wanted to be part of it. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, the world changed. Years passed. Idris grew into a young man, tall and strong, with a gift for languages and diplomacy. He became a mediator, traveling between human and orc settlements to resolve disputes and build bridges. Dara followed her mother's path, apprenticing as a carver and developing her own distinctive style. Delana became a healer, studying under Usara and expanding the clan's knowledge of medicine. Brenna shocked everyone by becoming a grafter, learning the trade from her father and taking it in new directions. Liam and Rivka grew older together, their hands roughened by work, their faces lined with laughter. The workshop remained a hub of activity, a place where people came not just for tokens but for advice, for comfort, for a reminder that different peoples could coexist. Pelin passed away in her sleep at the age of 107. The clan mourned her, and Rivka carved a memorial token that was placed in the clan hall beside her mother's masterwork. Desaz took Pelin's seat on the long table and, to everyone's surprise, proved a steady and fair leader. She never fully embraced Liam, but she loved his children fiercely, and that was enough on a warm summer evening when Liam was 63 and Rivka 61. They sat together in the workshop. The light was golden, slanting through the windows, and the smell of fresh wood shavings filled the air. Rivka was carving a token for a young couple, human and orc, who were getting married in the fall. Liam was sharpening tools, the rhythmic rasp of stone on steel a familiar comfort. "I have been thinking," Rivka said, setting down her gouge, "dangerous pastime." She smiled. "I want to write it all down, the history of how we came together, the trials and the triumphs, so that future generations will know that this was possible, that people chose to bridge the gap." "That is a good idea," Liam said. "You should do it." "We should do it," Rivka corrected. "Together." So they did. They spent the winter writing, Rivka's neat script filling page after page with the story of how a token thrown at a trade fair had changed 2 lives and begun something larger than either of them. They wrote about the trials and the prejudice, the joy and the love, the slow building of trust between peoples who had been enemies for generations. When it was finished, they presented it to the long table. Korath, now the eldest on the council, read it aloud to the clan, and there were tears and laughter in equal measure. The manuscript was copied and distributed, passed from settlement to settlement, human and orc alike. It became a story that children learned, a testament to the fact that change was possible if people were willing to work for it. Other couples followed their example, and the boundaries between human and orc grew fainter with each generation. Liam and Rivka lived to see their grandchildren grow, to watch the world transform around them. They faced hardships and celebrated triumphs, always together, always committed. And when they were very old, sitting on the plateau overlooking the valley they had helped to change, Rivka took Liam's hand and said, "Now you are mine." Liam laughed, the same easy laugh he had given that first day. "I always was. And I am yours, always." They sat in companionable silence as the sun set one more time, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for words. The orchard below was heavy with fruit, the workshop still standing strong, their legacy written in wood and stone, and the lives of the people they had touched. It was not a perfect ending. There were still challenges ahead, still people who resisted change. But it was a good ending, a happy ending, built on love and commitment, and the belief that different peoples could share the same soil and reach toward the same sky. And when the stars came out, cold and bright, Liam and Rivka remained on the plateau, hand in hand, watching the world they had built together glow softly in the darkness. Their story was complete, their token recognized, their love enduring. It was enough. It was everything. It was theirs.